What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, something a bit different for the channel. The first video for 2024. I thought, let's do something a bit different. And I thought, why not do a CEX challenge? So I've gone to my local CEX with a budget of £10, and let's see how many movies we can pick up for that budget. But to make it extra spicy, extra spooky, you could say, let's make this a horror challenge. We're only going to pick up horror titles. Are we going to get some good titles? I want to get titles that I've either seen and haven't rewatched for years, or titles that I've never seen, and I'm going to base my decisions on their little blurb on the back to see if they sound any good. Let's get to the footage. So yes, we are looking at the Blu-rays, Blood Rage on Arrow Video. I do want to check this out. I've heard it's terrible, but I do want to get it with a slip. The Rights, a Anthony Hopkins film that I've heard pretty decent things about. Slender Man, I've heard this is terrible and I won't be buying it. VHS 99? A franchise that I really want to check out that I have not got around to yet. All Hallows Eve, the very first film to feature Art the Clown from the Terrifier franchise. I do have it on Blu-ray, which is pretty cool. This really nice steelbook for Alien. If it was in better condition, I might have pulled the trigger. Maybe not for this challenge, but just in general. Arguably one of the greatest DVD box sets ever made, the Alien quadrilogy. It is a thing of beauty. It is amazing. I still own one. The Bay, one of the most underrated found footage mockumentary style movies ever, in my opinion. I really enjoy it. Brain Dead, one of the best splatterfest gorehound movie. Dreamcatcher, if there was a category for underrated movies, this would be one of the definitive lists. Dead End, a film that I've not seen but I've heard great things about. That might be one we pick up. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, one of the best in the franchise. Classic cover art, still holding a pretty high price at £6. Hollow Man, one of my favourite Kevin Bacon movies. The Mist, one of the best horror films of its time. Pieces on Arrow Video. Really rare to see a Arrow Video DVD, but I've got the Blu-ray, so I left it behind. The Pope's Exorcist, a film I do want to see. Possessor, one of the best sci-fi horrors in recent times. P2, a really cool horror film set in a car park, which I thought was really decent. Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, one of my favourite, if not my favourite, horror comedy. And the terrible Wrong Turn. Even the remake's terrible as well. As you can see, there was a lot of DVDs and Blu-rays at CEX to see, you know, what to pick up for my £10 budget. I was just had fun just looking through the shelves in this CEX and seeing, just trying to find some really oddities in terms of the horror genre. I didn't want to pick up anything generic that people have seen, you know, all the time. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into what I picked up in this £10 CEX horror movie challenge. So I've got a mix of DVDs and Blu-rays for this challenge. The first title is a Anthony Hopkins movie, a biblical horror, so to speak. I've heard pretty decent things about this one, The Rights. I've heard this is fairly an overlooked film that I think has its fans from what I've seen. This could be a really cool movie. The blurb sounds really cool. As always with these really biblical horror films, they like to say inspired by true events. It could be rubbish, it could be alright, it could be half decent, it could be great. Who knows? That's The Right. Next up is a film. I'm in an argument between two films in CEX. They were both £2 each. There was a film from the director of the Blair Witch Project called Lovely Molly. And there's this one that I picked up in the end, torn between the two, but I read the blurbs and the Apparition sounded the most interesting to me. This sounds quite interesting. The front cover's quite generic in its general, you know, 2000 is it two or 2010 horror. It's quite generic 2010 horror stuff based on the cover art. The title is quite generic, the Apparition. I mean, anything is quite generic in my opinion, but that is that. But it sounds interesting. It's about a group of people that believe that ghosts and spirits only exist if you believe in them. So they go about trying to basically believe that they can create their own entity, their own spirit, their own ghost. And when they do, things, I guess, happen badly. Bad things happen to them. So this sounds really cool. It sounds like a really interesting spin on the kind of ghost, haunting horror film. So I'm looking forward to checking this one out. Could be good. Will it scare me? Who knows? But that is The Apparition. Next up is a film that I'm actually really looking forward to. It stars Robert Englund, and it is set in a cinema, which I fucking love those kind of movies, and it just sounds awesome. That is The Last Showing. Yeah, so this stars Robert Englund. He is a projectionist, and the cinema no longer requires his skills as a projectionist, so he goes out of his way to get revenge on, I guess, the people involved in sacking him, I suppose. This sounds really fun. It could be terrible. It is from 2014. But yeah, I thought £2. It's a horror film I've not heard of. It's got some pedigree in there with Robert Englund, and it's set in the cinema, which I always enjoy films set in cinema, or horror films about film. I think it's just fun. It's a fun kind of almost like going full circle with a movie. But that is The Last Showing. Next up is, I had to get a monster movie in there, and I've never heard of this one before, but apparently it's like a Bigfoot, a Yeti horror film, and it is called Throwback. It's from 2013. It could be just utter garbage, right? It could be absolute, just utter, 2010s, just schlock, right? It could be. But who knows? It could be actually pretty good. It's got the typical kind of, outlet quotes on the back. It has everything you need in a good Bigfoot film. Exceptional. You are literally on the edge of your seat throughout. I mean, I've never been on the edge of my seat on any film because it's uncomfortable, and I like to be comfortable watching films. But anyway, yeah, so I had to get a monster movie in there somewhere, and Throwback was £2. I thought, why not? It looks quite fun. It could be quite fun. It could be terrible. But the whole point of this challenge was finding horror films I've not seen and just checking them out and get them as cheap as possible. And that is that one, Throwback. We're getting to our 2 DVDs now. This is the last 2 of the lot. And the first one is a early 2000s horror film called Dead End. I know nothing about this movie, but there's a channel, a horror channel out there called Possessed by Horror. Sarah, who runs that channel, she's a massive early 2000s horror fan, and she says this is one of her favourites. I'm a sucker for early 2000s horror. It's kind of when I got into horror as a young teenager, so it's got a sentimental thing for me. It's got a nostalgia thing for me. This one sounded decent. It sounds like it's a road movie as well, so I do like my road movies. I hadn't heard of it before. When I saw it on DVD for just £1.50, I thought, you know what, that's going to be chucked in as part of the challenge. That's Dead End. And the final pickup for this £10 challenge is a really underrated, I mean super underrated, one of my favourite found footage films from the 2010s. I really do enjoy this film, and I rewatched it like straight away when I bought this one. It's called The Bay. This is just fantastic. It's a like a documentary-esque kind of, it's shot like a documentary. It's really well done. It's kind of it kind of tells this tale of this little harbour town who is like basically ravaged by this unknown affliction. People are dying everywhere, and the CDC are trying to figure out what's going on so they can kind of send in people to help, but they don't understand what is happening. And they've got to like investigate the town of anything nefarious going on in the town and see where this infection could come from. It's shot very, very well. It's made to look like old grainy footage and kind of like edited together footage of things happening, and you had interviews of some of the surviving characters talking about the event like it's a documentary. It's really well done. I think it's really, really creepy and terrifying when you find out what is going on. It is actually proper horrible, and it could happen in real life. Technically not really, but in the idea of it, it could kind of happen, in that it's about the unpredictability of nature and how horrible things could be if we mess that up in any way. It's so good. It's like telling this tale through this idea of a documentary of the unpredictability of nature and the kind of ignorance of humanity, and the fact that we kind of just let things happen and don't really do much. It's really cool. It's terrifying. It's got that really icky ickiness to it that it makes your skin crawl a little bit. It is great. I highly recommend The Bay. So that's it, guys. That is the titles we picked up in this horror movie £10 CEX challenge. Let me know any and all of your thoughts in the comments down below, and if you've seen any of these films, let me know, are they any good? Let me know in the comments if you like these movies. I do recommend The Bay. I think it's fantastic. And as always, guys, I will see you next time, I suppose. Bye.